I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. During Thursday's House Judiciary Committee hearing, Representative Sylvia Garcia attacked her colleagues across the aisle. The Democratic lawmaker claimed white supremacists have made their way into government institutions and have a chokehold on the Republican Party. She called out Republicans for refusing to combat domestic terrorism and white nationalist ideologies, such as the Great Replacement Theory. She pressed Assistant Attorney General for National Security, Matthew Olsen, to comment on the connection between anti-abortion extremists and January 6th insurrectionists.
Time has expired. The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Garcia, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank Chairman Nadler for convening this very critical hearing. Attacks on minority communities and individuals are becoming an existential threat to our democracy and our nation. White supremacists have worked their way into our government institutions. Some would say they have the Republican Party in a chokehold. Some would also suggest that congressional enablers welcome their violence with encouragement and enthusiasm. They call insurrectionists patriots and defenders of freedom. They criticize their jail conditions when they've had a blind eye to the massive incarceration of Black and brown people in our country disproportionately. My Republican colleagues' refusal to combat instances of domestic terrorism motivated by racism violates my constituents' civil rights and liberties to live without fear of retaliation against their identities. Texas is not immune to the increasing rate of hate crimes since 2016. The shooting in El Paso, Texas on August of 2019 was motivated by anti-Latino and anti-immigrant sentiments harbored by the perpetrator of the shooting. Anti-Hispanic hatred is an inherent part of white supremacy ideology. The shooter claimed the attack was a justified response to the Hispanic invasion of Texas. He alluded to the Great Replacement, a conspiracy theory central to white nationalist ideology. These racist ideas are not a political anomaly, but rather the most extreme outgrowth of a white supremacist political culture. That racism, anti-Hispanic sentiment, anti-Semitism, and homophobia remain pressing problems in the United States and are reflected in 2019 hate crime increases. Congress must find ways to address the relationship between anti-immigrant rhetoric and domestic terrorism to prevent future acts of domestic terrorism. It is also critical for our friends across the aisle to collaborate with Democrats and put people over politics and put all of this terrorism behind us and be about protecting our democracy. Sir, I wanted to ask you a question about the interrelationship and the connectedness of all this. And I know that much has been said about some of the pro-abortion extremists, but I want to just say that according to the latest reports I've seen, anti-abortion extremists have been responsible for at least 11 murders, 26 attempted murders, 42 bombings, 194 arsons, and thousands of incidents of criminal activity directed at abortion providers since 1977, including thousands and thousands of trespassing charges, criminal mischief, vandalism. I mean, the list goes on. It's pages and pages of all of this. I think it said 2,224 trespassing charges. And it also talks about the connection between the anti-abortion extremists and the January 6th insurrectionists, that they overlap, and that one of the convicted arsonists and anti-abortion extremists live streamed from outside the Capitol on January 6th. Another one was a frequent protester at abortion clinics that entered the Capitol and was later charged, and the list goes on. So what is the interconnectedness between the extremists? I mean, do they do all acts of terror domestically, or is there some that lean more toward the hate crimes against Hispanics and Blacks and some towards the abortion clinics?
So it's an interesting question, because what we have seen, and the intelligence community has made this assessment, that violent extremists are often motivated by a mix of ideologies and don't necessarily fit neatly into one category or another. They may consume a variety of content, for example, online, that feeds into a worldview that causes them to become radicalized and ultimately move to violence. But it's sometimes difficult to pinpoint a particular ideology or a particular viewpoint. What I do know from the data is that individuals who are motivated by racial animus and individuals motivated by anti-government views account for the greatest number of lethal attacks in the U.S. In recent years. But the FBI seeks, when it identifies a case as a domestic violent extremist case, to categorize it as one category or another. But as my conversations with the experts has suggested to me, it's very difficult in some cases to pinpoint a particular ideology. The fundamental point for us at the Justice Department is that we prosecute acts of violence and threats of violence without regard to ideology or politics.
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
Madam Chair, I also ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the 2021 violence and disruption statistics prepared by the National Abortion Federation. Also 3 articles that I won't read all the titles, but they're all related to hate crimes and President Biden's funding of the police and other issues related to this hearing today.
Without objection.